Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men ask for the right words to say to be more successful, attractive, and desirable. But I found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines because every man is different. So giving words or scripts would be like giving a tall, thin man a shorter, wider man's pants, or vice versa. The words have to make sense for you and your personality, and there's so much happening beneath the surface that people are responding to. If you're interested in how to become a better lover and leader in your own unique way, go to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz, or you can text ALIVE to 44144. It only takes a couple minutes and you'll start to get an idea of how you can be both more respected and desired. After you fill it out, we can schedule a time to review your quiz and talk about your specific challenges and desires. So again, go to either shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text ALIVE to 44144. That's ALIVE to 44144. Enjoy this episode of Man Alive. Hello and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I'm your host, Shana James, and I'm here today with an amazing man, Frank Rich. Frank, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And we are going to talk about breaking free from porn. And, this is an important topic. And Frank, as you and I were talking, I was realizing not all men who come to me, this is even part of our discussion. And from what you were saying, it's probably more prevalent than even I have realized that men have relationships with porn that are not necessarily serving them, all the way from it's blocking some kind of intimacy or connection to the complete addiction or that sense of like a major getting in the way of intimacy and connection in sex life. So I feel grateful for you having your own personal journey and supporting men with this and being here today.
Yeah, absolutely. And just, I want to acknowledge you before we get into it, just, for having the openness to have this conversation and willingness to do it, because I know we're going to, get in some bits and areas of the conversation that maybe make some people feel a little bit uncomfortable, but I think in doing that, maybe we could help them in opening up and identifying if it is a problem.
Totally.
For certain.
Good.
So absolutely.
All right, so let me do your bio for people who don't know you, and then we'll dive in. So Frank is a former bodybuilder, entrepreneur, men's health coach, and host of the Superhuman Life podcast, which we just did our episode for that. Or depending on when this comes out, it might be after. After living with and battling addiction, depression, and anxiety for almost 20 years, Frank is on a mission to help men who are suffering with many of the same issues take back control of their lives through the power of faith and fitness. And Frank has helped thousands of men transform their physique through online coaching platform, and is also the founder of and CEO of Rebuilt Recovery, a company based on a growth-centric, holistic approach to addiction and recovery. Rebuilt Recovery provides fitness training for men going through recovery, as well as one-on-one coaching for men who want to break free from porn addiction. His goal is that by being open and transparent with his struggles and having real, raw conversations with others who have overcome adversities, that he can empower you to face the darkness, take control, and ultimately create the life you've dreamed of on your own superhuman life. So thank you again for your vulnerability, for being willing to go first and be a man who is fit and buff. And I think we said you can either lift, 500 pounds and you can cry in the same morning, right? Like it's something I believe in very strongly, that vulnerability is human. It's not just gendered. It's not just for women, and men are so used to being the rock and having it all together. So thank you for showing that doesn't have to be the case.
Yeah, thank you. And that is really what has drawn me, as I've gotten more, deeper into your work and spent some time just chatting with you over the last couple of days. Like, I love the message that you're sharing with men. I think it's such needed piece. And yeah, vulnerability is a human trait. And just, to add to, the bio there, I think sharing is a human trait and characteristic. So if I have a story, a journey, and then some real valuable insights and tips that could help other men, then I'm doing my service as a human here
Yeah.
and sharing it.
Yes. Awesome. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your story and your battle or struggle, however you call it, with porn and overcoming it, breaking free
Yeah.
from it.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I think you said in the bio there, I mean, it was a 20-year battle, just to kind of set the context and frame so people can understand, age. Cause I think age is an important piece here, and how porn maybe made its first introduction into a man's life, and then how it kind of evolved, I guess, for lack of a better
Right. Well, right. Depending on the
word there.
age, some still started with magazines. And now the
Yeah.
younger crowd started, completely online. So,
Yeah, and I
right.
think that's
Different journey.
it's an important part. So I fall into that older crowd there.
Yeah.
I'm be 37 at the end of this month. So
Mhm.
80s baby, 90s child, grew up kind of pre-internet.
Yeah.
So the first kind of introduction is probably for just the same as every other man that kind of grew up in my generation. It was an older brother, a neighbor, or dad's
Yeah.
magazine
Yep.
stumbled across. It's funny because we've had a few different guests come on and share the story about pornography magazines in the woods. And this was kind of where it started as a little boy, like we'd find the magazine, or we'd have to steal it from the store, and then we'd kind of take
Take
it
them
out in
into
the
the
woods,
woods.
leave it there, for
Yeah.
all the other neighborhood kids
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
to kind of have their take at it, I guess. But so yeah, I was introduced very, very young. I mean, under the age of 8, I was
Hmm.
exposed to some kind of graphic, hardcore magazines
Yeah.
and videos. And I'm not blaming, anybody. I don't,
Right. The
obviously I don't.
past is what it is, and then
It
we all
is
have to work with that.
exactly. But the reason I brought up the age and the internet, because I can remember being in high school, getting my first computer and having, basically internet for the first time. It's like, now you're going to go explore and see
Yes.
what's out there. So you take unlimited access to the world, a 15-year-old, kid with thriving hormones,
Hormones. Yep.
and he's going to go down the World Wide Web and find it. So yeah, from high school, it became really probably a daily habit or practice for me. I
Yeah.
mean, and then it just made it even worse as I got into my 20s and I started, having some success in business. And I remember the first BlackBerry. So now it became even more
Right.
accessible.
You could have it
It's
with
like
you at any moment.
anytime. And this is all very important things to mention and highlight, because I don't think people think about the accessibility and what makes that such a problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, for me, it was something that obviously growing up and at the time, like I didn't understand the severity of it. I didn't understand the damage that I was doing to myself, because it's porn, young kid. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
It's
like
just
it's accepted. That's what
exciting. It's
boys
accepted.
do,
Yes.
type of thing, right? Um,
What would
so
you say? I mean, you tell me, this might be jumping too far ahead, but I'm kind of wondering, from looking back, what is the damage that you see was done?
Oh, I mean, we can go quite a bit there.
Yeah.
Physically, some of the damage that occurs is premature ejaculation, erectile dysfunction,
Hmm.
and this is really, I feel, this has kind of been in the last 5 to 7 years, kind of at the front of bringing more awareness to porn addiction, realizing like that as a healthy man,
Hmm.
like you should wake up with an erection, and
An
like you
erection in
should
the
be
morning.
pretty rock hard solid, like
Mm.
whenever whenever you do get an erection. But seeing men in their young 20s, and even healthy men in their 30s that are suffering with erectile dysfunction, linking it back to the porn, and we can talk about kind of how that happens in the
Yeah.
brain and the wiring connectivity there. But yeah, I think negative side effects, obviously, the two that I just said. I can look back now and understand that how my depression and anxiety that I struggled with in my 20s was linked to my porn addiction. I
Yeah.
didn't understand it at the time.
Yep.
Once again, I just accepted that as who I was. You know, I came from a family that was broken. My parents split when I was young. I know my dad struggled with depression. I come from, you know, a history of suicide in my family, multiple
Wow.
men taking their lives. So I think when I was struggling and I was battling with depression and anxiety, like I just said, oh, this
It's
is a
just part of
part
my family. This is
of
just
who I
my
am.
lineage. Yeah.
Yeah, accepting it. And now I can look back and say, no, actually, because you were so caught up in your pornography
Yeah.
addiction, the damaging effects that you know to the brain there is what ultimately caused that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, to kind of fast forward here, you know, we're talking 25 years of not just an addiction to pornography. That was obviously the one that really had its grips on
Yeah.
me, but I did struggle with alcohol. I did struggle with drug use. I did struggle with, you know, probably a sex addiction for lack of a better word. And this is connected, you know, this is something that is very well documented
Yeah.
clinically
That they're all kind of a cluster
that
of.
guys that are high users of porn struggle with frequent drug use, struggle with
Interesting.
more alcohol use because it's tied into the guilt and shame emotion. So
Uh-huh.
frequent high porn users, they live in this secrecy, like, you know,
Yes.
not sharing. Well, I am now sharing with everybody what I've gone through because I
Yeah.
think there's so much value in it. But when you're really caught up in it, like you're kept a secret. And this is why I was bringing it up with you
Mm-hmm.
and the work and clients with everything that you're doing. Like, is it even addressed at the beginning? Because I know how it can impact a relationship.
Yes.
So to get back to the connection there, porn leads to guilt, shame, anxiety.
Yeah.
Now, to mask and hide those emotions and feelings, where are we going to look at? We're going to look at other substances
Alcohol, food,
that can
drugs, whatever. Right.
exactly. So for me, none of those other ones were really like a major problem. You
Mm-hmm.
know, obviously I had bodybuilding, I had a healthy lifestyle. So if I ever felt alcohol got out of control, I could quickly kind of turn on, you know, my bodybuilder and say,
Yeah.
all right, 16 weeks, like we're going to go through a serious physical, you know, transformation. So I was like able to manage, you know, a lot of those other addictions, I guess, for lack of a better term. But the pornography, it always had its grips on me. I
Yeah.
mean, it didn't matter relationship, it didn't matter what I was doing financially, it didn't matter
What
if I was
happened in your relationship as a result? What were some of the the negative, you know, impact in your relationships?
yeah, I can speak to something that I'm going through still right now.
Yeah.
I'm in the early stages of a split of somebody I was with for would have been 4 years yesterday. So she was with me before I was able to break free. And
Yeah.
there's elements of like sharing with her and her being, you know, kind of the big motivating drive and force for me to break free. But even with all the work that I've done on myself, even
Mm-hmm.
with all the work that we did with seeking counseling and seeking therapy and group sessions and just the openness and vulnerability, there still are pieces tied to, I guess, the previous life,
Yes.
the secrets
The
being
secrets,
held.
the lack of
Uh,
intimacy, the yes, all of that, right? That's hard to
exactly.
recover
The
from.
you know once it came out, you know, that I was not just watching porn as a most men do, but I was really addicted.
Yeah.
And then we started to talk about, well, is this why, you know, sexually you tried this and
Right.
you know, because you almost like you get to the point where what you're watching, what you are enjoying on the screen, you're gonna have to either take that in the bedroom and that's
Uh-huh.
gonna be the real, you know, world, or if she's not willing to participate,
Then
we're just
something
gonna
seems wrong.
we're just gonna shut that off, and then
Right.
that's gonna make the porn even worse. So there's a lot there that we're
Yeah. Which
working through.
that, you know, that part feels so heartbreaking to me too, because as a woman, I know, as a woman and having many girlfriends and having worked with women clients, it's like we are all so different in the way our bodies respond and what, you know, how we react, what gets us turned on. And so then to try to overlay something that a woman's doing on a screen, you know, versus coming to a woman and collaborating and co-creating and exploring together, right? It just you lose that.
Yeah, yeah. So here we are, 20 years. I want to bring this, bring this home.
Yeah.
Cause I've been all over the place here, but it was a series of events, and it's so closely tied with, I think, the work that you do here. I mean, there was moments of being in the right type of community, being around the right type of people that made me feel safe, that I could talk about some things that I was dealing with. There was the piece where, I actually opened up for the first time. I'd been at one point, I'd gone through, series of reading and research and watching, TEDx talks,
Yeah.
because trying to get at the root of it. Like there was finally the point when I was, 2 years ago, I'm like, God, like what is going on? I realized physically I had some of the symptoms. I suffered with erectile dysfunction, and I think in the right type of crowds, when conversations start to open up, you start to look internally at yourself and the life that you're living. So through a series of being around the right people, and having open and vulnerable conversations.
Yes. So that you realize you're not the only one, and you're not a horrible person
Yes.
because of this. And
Yes. And that was one of the key moments. It's the first time I shared it. I felt safe because he had shared it with me first. So,
right. So someone going first actually allowed you
yeah,
to then say, "Oh,
allowed
okay."
me to, and then when I opened up, and he's like, dude, like, you're not the only one. And instead of like brushing it off and being like, dude, just man up or whatever, like, he kind of like embraced me. It was like, dude, we're in this together. Like, I know what you're
Yes.
going through. So, for me, a lot of those first key moments were being in the right group, being in the right network, the vulnerability.
Which it sounds like is why you do what you do, right? Where you bring men together and make it safe for them to share.
100%
Yeah.
why I do what I do. And that's what led me to the little podcast, because when I shared it with the first person, it's like the way that he accepted it, it was like, all right, like, you're going to be okay. So shortly after that, I literally like went through my phone and like I called every guy that I was somewhat close
Wow.
with. And this was obviously pre-COVID. This was, year and a half, almost 2 years ago. So there's sometimes we'd meet at a coffee shop, and I would text a guy and be like, hey man, it's been a while, like, why don't we meet up for coffee next Tuesday? Not telling him why he's coming, and then we're 10 minutes into kind of like the catching up bit, and I'm like, I drop this bomb on him. I'm like, hey, this is kind of what I've been going through. But the key here, why I kept doing it, is because every single time I would have this conversation, it didn't matter who was sitting on the opposite side. I mean, we're talking CEOs, doctors, high level, high performing entrepreneurs, but then at the same time, like the grocery store clerk, like,
everybody.
It didn't matter who they were. They all said the same thing. Like, brother, it's okay. I battled with this thing too. You're going to be okay. So realizing that I was not the only man in the world that was so caught up in this and was battling with this, made me feel like it was going to be okay for me, and I was going to get through this.
Yes. Thank you. So, okay, as you've moved through your own journey and now are working with other men, right? What would you say, what are some of the foundations or the main foundations of what has to be in place for a man to break free from porn?
Yeah, I think we said two of them right there. So just reiterating those two facts. I think the first step for anybody, if you're going to overcome a porn addiction, and we can address that word addiction, because I know a lot of people are going to maybe balk at or roll their eyes, and that's okay, because even clinically, like, it's not yet accepted on the same level as alcoholism, heroin, or these drugs. And my hope and goal is that soon we get it there, because understanding the effects are the same. The negative side effects are the same. All the same chemicals are released, whether you snort a line of Coke or you watch porn and masturbate. The same, dopamine release.
Right.
So, but to answer the question, what does a guy need, is first, I think he's got to be able to look at himself and say, yes, this is actually a problem that is impacting other areas of my life. If porn is just something that you're looking to quit because you don't want to do it anymore, you may have a little bit of success. But but if you can piece to, where am I
How
falling
this
short,
impacts
and
my
how is it
relationships, my
how is it
business,
impacting
my health.
relationship? Exactly. So I think identifying that's a problem and acknowledging where it's holding you back. And then the second piece that I think is got to happen at the beginning, it's that vulnerability, or it's that getting at least one other person like in this fight with you.
Not being alone in it.
Not being alone, joining some type of either support group, SAA group, get involved in a men's group at your church, or even just find a person in your life that you can trust. At first, I don't recommend it, the spouse. I feel it's got to be, for a man, it's got to be another guy.
Somewhere outside the relationship.
Exactly. Yep. We want to work you to the point where you can have that conversation with your spouse or significant other. But I think in the early stages, it's recruiting at least one other guy in your corner that you're vulnerable with and is going to hold you.
It totally makes sense. Yeah. Well, I know you also talk about faith and fitness as the cornerstones. Can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah. So for me, faith sits at the pillar of everything that I do in my life. And we didn't get a lot into this into my story because of the conversation you and I had before the podcast, but there was a moment for me in my life where I became a Christian and I fully surrendered my life over to Christ. So for me, when I speak about faith in my life, it is understanding that Christ is King, that He is our Lord, and that without His grace, like, I wouldn't be saved. So I lean into that for my faith. But faith, as we talked about before recording, I think faith has to come in the belief in yourself first. Yes. So with something like a porn addiction, like if you're caught up in the guilt, shame, or maybe you've tried already, like maybe you've tried to go without porn for 15 days is the longest that you make, and then you keep relapsing, you keep falling back. Well, that's like a blow at your confidence. Like you're probably, if you've done this and you tried, you're like, you've given up. You're like, I just can't go without it.
You lose the faith in yourself.
You lose the faith in yourself. Yeah. So I think for faith, it's having the belief that yes, you can break free from this. But understanding that it's going to be a challenge.
How do you help men have faith who come to you without the faith?
The faith in themselves.
Let's start with that. The faith in themselves.
Yeah. So I see lack of faith in yourself as a lack of self-confidence. And I think self-confidence is built and maintained through keeping the promises that you make to yourself.
Right. So it can't come, like, if you're not willing to try, or it's kind of like being an entrepreneur. You can't just create content in your closet and, stress about it. You've got to actually take the action, put it out there, test yourself in a way.
100%. Yeah. So for a guy that is just lacking faith in himself or lacking self-confidence, we're going to start with something really, really small. And for some guys, it's just establishing a time you wake up in the morning. As simple and small as that sounds, if a man has an inconsistent wake up time, and you simply insert like a set time where he's going to wake up every morning, in order for that to happen, he's going to then have to insert a time he goes to sleep. So now we put two habits in his day that he can set, follow through, execute upon, but then rewarding himself. So going back to what I said, self-confidence is built by keeping the promises that you make to yourself. Right. So if I've never woken up at a specific time, and then I come to Frank and Frank says, okay, starting next Monday, I need you to wake up at 6 a.m. You wake up at 6 a.m. and you look yourself in the mirror and say,
I did
job.
it.
Acknowledge it, reward yourself for it. We can get into why that.
Yeah, I was going to say, what are the rewards? And then what do you do if you break that commitment?
Great. So the reason why you need to reward yourself, this ties into understanding how porn is impacting the dopamine receptors in the brain. So dopamine is like our reward center. It's like our body's releases the chemical to tell you something that you're pursuing is of pleasure to you. Porn literally has the ability to, I need to be careful in the way that I say things here, but I want to use words that make sense. But we're going to tap into kind of some science stuff here. So every time like you're pursuing something that brings you pleasure, like you get a hit of dopamine. So over time, you're conditioning your body with an overuse or overconsumption of porn to signal like that is where the
That
dopamine
is where the dopamine comes from.
comes from. And
Yes.
this what makes sites like Pornhub or even things like Instagram so damaging, because it's not just the act of release,
Yeah.
it's the pursuit. So understanding that in the pursuit, every new image or every new video or every new scene within that video is a hit of dopamine.
Yes.
Over time, you literally atrophy that dopamine pathway in your brain to where maybe the only thing that's going to bring you more dopamine
is
the
that
pursuit
intensity, that
through more
pursuit.
porn.
Mm-hmm.
But then what ends up happening is dopamine in every other area of your life, it doesn't get released. So you start to lose like the joy, the happiness, and the pleasure from just normal everyday activities.
Yes.
So going back to why you need to reward yourself for keeping those small little promises, because even an internal reward, even like looking myself in the mirror and like a positive affirmation of like, good job, like amazing, congratulations, boom, hit a dopamine, boom, hit a dopamine.
So that's one of the ways you would reward yourself.
That's one of the ways
actually acknowledging yourself, appreciating yourself.
Yes.
What are some of the other ways that you have men reward themselves?
We do daily journaling, and then over the course of the program, there's a series of kind of milestones that we hit. You know, so depending upon where you're at and what you're going through, but we'll look at, you know, let's say we're going to work together for 16 weeks. Well, at week 4, we're going to look back at milestones, highlight, acknowledge, reward. Look at, you know, at the end of week 8, look back, highlight, acknowledge, reward. So yeah, I think a daily journaling, you know, just getting your thoughts out on paper and really just being aware and intentional for your day. The keeping small promises. So we build, you know, we'll start with a wake up time, but then we put a series of morning routines in place, you know.
Right. And I would imagine there's got to be things to take the place of porn. Like if it was part of your daily routine, you can't just take that out and leave a gaping hole. There's got to be something, I think, right, that actually replaces that.
Yes. And it's going to be individualized for every single person. Yeah. So I don't think that I can give you like a blanket statement on what that looks like. But yes, you have to replace the habits with more productive, you know, habits that serve you and other people.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. Anything else you want to say around building that confidence, building that faith in themselves? I know you were talking about reward, and then there was another piece of it.
Yeah. So building the faith, I think, you know, if it's Christ, God, Buddha, any of them.
Right. That's what I wanted to say. Right. Because for you, it's Christ. For others, it might be Buddha. It might just be spirituality. It might, you know, there are so many different ways to have faith outside of ourself, or you could say inside of ourself as well on a deeper level. So you also work with that.
Yeah. So I would say, well, no, the majority of the men coming to me are coming to me with a Christian, you know, background, or they were in there and they've walked away, or they've realized that, you know, they call themselves a Christian, but they're also watching porn every single day. So there's a misalignment there. And I think that's a big piece too. It's understanding whatever your beliefs are, like, are you fully in line with
your own beliefs, right? So you're not saying like you have to turn to Christ, but whatever your beliefs are, your spirituality or your faith.
Yeah, I'm not a Buddhist, but I don't think anywhere in Buddhist text he's saying that, you know, in order to find spiritual enlightenment, it takes a porn habit on a daily basis. So I think, but I think your faith and your belief, like, it more comes down to like, is what you're saying you believe actually in line
with what you're doing,
way that you're living. Yeah. And if those are not congruent, like, I don't think that there's going to be a whole lot that either you or I could do for anybody. So you got to, I think, get that in
so it sounds like, right, you were saying taking small steps to start to build those really healthy habits, so that you're doing what you say you're doing. You're building that sense of integrity, commitment to yourself. Yeah. And I would imagine that's really hard to do on your own.
100%. Yeah. Hard to do on your own.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, why you do what you do. And bringing men together. Yeah. So, okay, we could keep talking about this forever. But what do you think is most important, right? For a man who's listening to this, who recognizes, oh, I may have a problem, whether it's addiction or not addiction, I don't know. We can let the language go. But what would you suggest he do now?
Right now, first step.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Look at all the areas in your life. So for me, I kind of broken life into kind of five, I guess, pillars.
Mm.
Faith being number one. We've already talked about where I get that.
Mm-hmm.
Fitness, being pillar number two, because I think it's the next most important thing outside of your faith and belief in yourself or whatever. The second is your fitness. And when I say fitness, it's like this physical body, this meat suit that I'm living in right now. Fitness for me for a long time was bodybuilding, was maximum muscle growth.
Yeah.
That's not,
not your priority now.
Not my priority now. I still love training that way, but I don't think that type of fitness talk really benefits anybody in the world that I'm trying to help right now. But the fitness piece, we look at nutrition, we look at, mindset fitness, like
Mm-hmm.
what is a daily mindset, exercise or fitness program?
Oh, I love it.
Gonna look at supplementation. Obviously is a big piece. Food is so important, so important. Once again, getting back to that dopamine piece.
Yeah.
Everything that we're doing in the first kind of 3 months, 4 months, or 6 months, we're trying to reboot your brain.
Your system, your brain. Yeah.
We're literally trying to rewire the way, and wiring is not actually the way that the brain is pieced together, but I think it does a great job of kind of explaining everything. So we're trying to rewire that brain. So if we can look at removing all the exterior dopamine that we're getting, obviously with a case like this, we're going to stay away from porn forever. Like that's got to be the first part. But secondly, we look at removing, processed foods. We look at removing sugar and all these other type of artificial dopamine hits that you'll get from food. Yeah. So if we can shut off all the areas where we're getting it and then control where the dopamine is coming from, where we talked about the little daily rewards, the little setting small goals and accomplishing them and rewarding yourself. Yeah. So we actually use a carnivore diet. And it's
just started trying that. It's so fascinating to me. But I can imagine how all of our bodies are so different, but right, just meat. It's so fascinating.
Yeah. So and I'm so excited about what's going on right now because this diet's really only kind of been around for 3 years, 4 years, maybe. Dr. Sean Baker was one of the first ones on Joe Rogan's podcast, but they're finally at the point now where they're actually raising some funds to put it through kind of some clinical trials. And clinical research. Because when you look at the stuff anecdotally, like how people are curing depression, anxiety, and all these other physical symptoms. So where I said, okay, if I know anxiety, depression is linked to porn addiction, we can address the porn addiction one way. There's things we do to understand triggers and what drives you to that. But if we could also work towards overcoming or breaking that depression at the same time, through a different path, it's going to accelerate that process and move it forward. So that's why we look at using at least that carnivore diet for a short interim basis.
So, okay. So, and again, to me, I'm like, okay, some people's bodies do better with vegetables. Some people's bodies do better with meat. Like, again, it's not for me, instead of, one faith, one diet, because I've tried so many of them and had very varied results, but right. Finding a diet, something that works for you. Can you talk about the 3 other pillars?
Yeah. So faith, fitness, finance. In finance, obviously I am an entrepreneur, business owner, online marketer. Guys don't come to me to help them, build a business. But if once again, understanding that one of the major symptoms of porn addiction is lack of focus and attention deficit disorder, then we can probably somewhere figure out how his overuse of porn has impacting his career or his business or whatever it is that he's doing. It's crazy because we get guys coming in there and then in 8 weeks, they've got a promotion and they're making 50 grand more at their job. Yes. And they're people are telling me at the office, how different I am. And I'm like,
there you go.
This is why we address it in the way that we do. So finance, the next pillar, family.
Uh-huh.
And family is not just your immediate family. Family I see
Mm,
is actually your entire circle. So who are you
community.
spending your time with? Your
Uh-huh.
community. Exactly. So is that being a part of groups? Is that being a part of a church or community service? Like, I think family is really the
Yes.
people
Wider.
that are in your life.
Like your
And this,
village, it seems like, in a way. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And this is making sure that you have not just have the right people, but that you don't have the wrong people. So part of this process in the beginning is looking at that circle and which ones maybe have the negative influence that
Yeah.
either drive you to not the porn habit, maybe drive you to some of the other destructive habits that
Yep.
if we were to look at it, leads you to acting out on
Yes.
porn.
Yes.
And then the last F is freedom.
Mm,
Freedom is simply what are you doing with your time when you're not working. So you work
awesome.
a 40-hour work week, 50, 60, whatever it is. That leaves you a lot of time when you're not sleeping.
Yep.
So what are your hobbies? What are your activities? What does your service in the community look like? The hobbies and creative activities is a really cool piece that we get to address, because once again, a symptom of porn addiction is just the lack of like focus, and also like you have all
Creativity
this
too, I would think, right? Like,
creative energy
yeah,
that you're kind of just blasting into a towel
the
or napkin
abyss. Yeah,
or
or a towel.
whatever.
The abyss or a
Uh,
towel.
so when you can like harness that
Hmm.
creative energy and channel it, like you can learn an instrument and like accelerated time, or even if it's like taking on a side project or doing stuff around the house, like guys' lives are just get turned around because
Yeah.
they're channeling and focused,
Yeah.
on putting these little pillars in place.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for all of this. And the 5 pillars feel so important, right? Because I think sometimes if
Hmm.
we just try to replace one thing with something else without actually looking at the bigger picture, the impact on the people in your life, your work, your whatever's beyond work, community, all of that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and we talked about this when you were on, and I mean the 5 is it's kind of an outline that I hand to guys. I mean, it's obviously everybody's focus is going to be dependent upon where the season of life that they're currently in, but
yep.
I think where it's got to start, it's got to start with envisioning your
Yeah.
life without pornography.
Yeah.
I have a saying that I use all the time. It's like, if you are going to overcome your battle with porn addiction, you
Yep.
must become the person that is no longer addicted to porn.
Yeah.
And I think that becoming piece is so important. So what we do is we actually help the guys like map out and create a vision for their life. So you identify the problems on where porn is holding you back, and then you create the vision of what your life can be like
Yes.
if you were to go 5 years without porn. So
Yeah.
we had them picture like pretty big, like I want you dreaming big,
Great.
and then we build the bridge to link the two together.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this. This is a really powerful start for men to take a look at themselves and really look at,
Yeah,
okay, is this an issue in my life? And if so, how can I actually get on the path of being healthy and having incredible pleasure and intimacy and freedom
yeah,
and, fulfillment in life without needing porn to be at the center of it?
absolutely.
Any last thing you want to leave men with besides where they can find you?
Um, no, I mean, I don't think there's anything, specifically to leave them with, but maybe if they're questioning, this conversation, or they're on the fence right now, it's I can tell you personally, how my life changed.
Yeah.
And I mean, I launched a podcast called The Superhuman Life. Like there's a lot of like meaning behind
Yes.
what I did. Like porn is bad. Porn is poison. Like
Mm.
it is ruining it's ruining our children's minds because the ability that they're exposed to it. I mean, I think the most recent number that I saw was like 90% of kids are exposed to pornography before the age of 11. So
Wow.
I know the impact I shared. It was, very young
Whew.
for me. So I think understanding like the true impact that it's having on the world, like if if you are going to be the dad that you know you can be, if you're going to be the husband, the lover that you know you can be, if you're going to be the boss, the CEO, like whatever it is that you're doing in this world, think about if you're truly going to step into all of that greatness, how is your porn use actually contributing to that?
Yes.
If you can give me a reason on how it is,
how it's actually benefiting,
all the power to you to continue moving forward. But I would challenge you to actually see all the ways that it's holding you back. And if you truly want to step into everything that you were created in this world to do, I think a great place to start is removing porn from it.
Thank you. And where can men find you?
Yeah, obviously the podcast is a great place where we're hanging out. The Superhuman Life, your episode will be coming up shortly. Best place to connect with me daily is on Instagram. Great. It's at the Superhuman Frank. And if it's okay, I have a gift or like a free offer. So if you're that guy and you heard this and you're questioning of like, can I live life without porn? Like, can I actually move beyond this? Go to www.the7stepguide.com. It's a free book that we've written. It's an ebook, so you'll get it digitally immediately. But it's 7 steps to living life without porn. And we just walk you through actually how to build your life to where porn does not even enter the equation anymore.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and it gave you something to consider and explore in your life. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 to get a sense of how you can become a better lover and leader. You'll start to see how you can be both more respected and desired in your unique and genuine way. If you don't feel as confident or as excited about life or love as you'd like to be, this quiz is a really great starting point and will guide you toward a more passionate love life and a more inspiring and successful career. So again, text ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 or head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.